don't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear
you. We are glad to be blessed with your presence. So once again, this is Let's Talk Real Life with Ms. Nada Manning, WBISLP 106.9. Well, technically on this particular day when the show is recorded live, it is 12 a.m. If you're looking at the rebroadcast, it could be any time during the day. So, but if you're looking at the show live right now, you can call in at 252-756-2008. That's 252-756-2008. And you can address Madam Manning directly if you have questions or inquiry or further inquiry about what she is saying. A couple of other housekeeping notes. You can listen to us on the website at www.awesomeradio.org. That's www.awesomeradio.org. You can go up there and find the media player and hit play, and you can listen to us all over the world. That's one of the easiest ways online. Another is download the app from Google Play or the App Store, Roku TV. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further delay, please allow me to introduce the host of Let's Talk Real Life with Nada Manning, Ms. Nada Manning.
Good evening, everybody. Good morning. It is after midnight, so I can say good morning now. And I do hope and pray that you all are doing well out there and you'll have your listening ears tuned in to what I have to say as we continue with the topic of relationships. I thank the Lord for this opportunity one more time. As I continue to move forward, God is good, and it gives me great pleasure to talk with you all on various life topics. So we're going to talk some real life issues tonight as we focus on relationships with our adolescents, that middle school age group. Last 2 weeks we've been talking about the under 10. So now we're going to be talking about those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and 9th graders, ranging from 11 to 15? Somewhere around there, 11, 12, 13, 14, yeah. So just a little bit from last time. I hope that some of you out there was listening last week as well. And I believe I ended my session last week focusing on unwanted touching. But right before that, we were briefly discussing with those younger children about the chores that they can develop their skills on so that they can be more responsible as they get a little older and going into these big girls and boys schools from elementary to middle school. So doing those chores might be hard to do at that time, but it's a learning process. It gives them some responsibility. And as we get older, we do need to learn to be more responsible in small ways as we grow into bigger things in our lives. So let's talk a little bit about that unwanted touching. It can start in elementary school. It can start at the age of 5, right when they're getting ready to go to school. But we as the responsible adults are in a position to talk to our children. We're going to, what the words say, train up a child in the way they should go so that as they get older, they won't depart from it. Well, that training up a child goes for years and years and years because we are always learning. We're always being trained on something. And as we get older, we learn these different traits. So it starts when the child is old enough and big enough to understand a few words, like no. That's a big word, 2 letters, but it sure do mean a whole lot as we get older. No means no. No means no. N-O. In plain English, I think every language can understand what that means. So let's focus on that touching piece where we want to let our little ones know as they get into away from the home environment, going into the schools around a whole lot of other children. But it becomes more apparent, I think, as the child gets older, going into the middle school age, around 10, 11, 12, 13, around there. They should have by then learned what that no touching means, and that is in various areas. And that goes for the girls and the boys, that touching, because we're talking about relationships as it applies to touching. What does that touching have to do with relationship? Everything. Has everything to do with relationships, because one touch can mean one thing and another touch can mean something else. And as we grow into adulthood, we get to learn what those other touchings are. And it stills when no is no, no is no, even when you get grown. But we're not going to go there right now. We just want to stick with the younger age children as they grow to develop into being responsible men and women. I want to start, as talking about myself, as I have done for the past several months now. And by the way, tomorrow will be my 1-year anniversary, folks, being on this talk show. 1 year on September the 1st. And I thank God for every opportunity from that time to this one. We had our ups and downs, but God is good. So as I continue, I just want to throw that in there, that this is anniversary, and how thankful I am for you all who are listening out there, and your call-ins and your comments. But getting back to the subject at hand, and that has a lot to do with relationships, but that's more on an adult level. But right now we're talking about these adolescents. When they get out into the world meaning their world would be the school system, because they're coming out of their homes now. They're coming out of what they've been used to since they were born in the world. Now they're going out there among all these other strange folks, people they've never seen before, all kind of mood swings, all kind of laughter, all kind of some of everything going on. So it's a lot for them to soak in as they go out there. Well, by the time they get to middle school, they're like 11 and 12 years old. They've been in the world for 10 years. During those critical 10 years that we've been talking about for the past 2 weeks, it stands to reason that we are at a point where we want them to know
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue. It seems like we had a few technical difficulties on the show this evening, but we thank you for tuning in. I'm straighten my head out here. I'm looking at StreamYard. Well, you're talking about the relationships when our children are at their most vulnerable times. They should be protected. Okay, they should be protected. That's number one. They should be protected. They should feel safe. They should be adored. They should be showered with familia or family protection and love and affection. That's the language they should be learning. Protecting our children from harm could really be in various ways of physical barriers and a fortress built around our children to allow them to understand what appropriate relationships are when it comes to the touching aspect, when it comes to hugging, when it comes to kissing on the cheek, or when it comes to riding on somebody's back, or when it comes to the personal space and other people in their personal space. So I believe the teacher wanted you to understand that those areas uh, you were definitely mindful of those things. And if you have a situation where there is, I had a boss one time and said, "What situation? What kind of situation is that? What is situation?" And it seemed to be a vague word that you almost say when you say situation. It was a word describing a situation that had to be, the details had to be filled in. So if you have a dysfunctional family, if you have a two-parent family that you consider normal, somebody else could consider it dysfunctional, or if you have a blended family, two families put together, in, it could be a man and a woman, or it could be a foster care situation, a blended family blending in where the children are from different mothers, different households in the one household. Whatever family and whatever status you have, then by all means, you can work on that or work from that, understanding that the family in itself is most important, and it can survive when you are setting the boundaries, when you are setting the boundaries for your family to feel protected. Let's see here. How could I explain this more? The training part, as she was referring to, is the part where you are teaching the child is mannerisms. And in the mannerisms that you're teaching is laden with the boundaries on describing a person's personal space. So I just wanted to say, if you're looking at it from a perspective of how to, now that's a, let me say, that's whether you have a two-parent home, one-parent home, all those things on the menu that I just mentioned um, are a reality. They're the things that the child begins to pick up in the environmental type situation, the household type situation. Now, when it comes to a training aspects of it, the things that you say to the child, the things that you say no to, the don't touch this, don't do touch that, go to this place, the time, the way that you train a child is when you are showing them where their hands go and where their hands don't go, inadvertently, through uh, coaching. Right. So when to speak and when not to speak, and when to go outside and when not to go outside, and those things. So when you're training the child, also that you did not have yourself, you have a blended family. There's a lot that goes into that when you have, let's say, a man and a woman, and both have a child together, and then one of them have a child that's outside of that relationship, that was born outside of that relationship, and then that child comes into the relationship. You have that situation there, where somebody might be called a stepmom, somebody might be called a stepdad. So you guys probably are listening to me. It's like, yeah, we know all of that, but I want to say, if you're doing that, that is the most difficult. Textbook says this is the most difficult type of family to steer. It's like a ship, keeping that ship on course. If you want to look at keeping a family on course, my family, whew, if it was a ship, boy, we sank. We were resurrected. We sank. We were resurrected. We sank. Finally, we sank, split up. So I don't know what to say in that regard, but I had some comforts. I had some staples through all of it. And in my family situation, I felt like we had a ship and I was in a canoe. Excuse me. I was in a canoe going along the way, and the canoe I was in it by myself, but I saw my family at a slight distance, so I was there. So if you're in a situation like that and you have to teach in that environment, and you may or may not have a church home or go to a church, or you may be have faith, but you may not be religious. Those things are where you have to pick up on the things that you were taught, and that's what you're going to filter with, anyways. So you want to look at the product of what you're teaching. Um, if it's your child biologically, if it's the other person's child and not yours, there's communication between you and the child's mother or the child's father. If the child comes over during visitation, I'm not gonna say that's hard. I'm just gonna say that's a fact of your relationship. That's a fact of your status, where the children have to continue to be protected, have to continue to be guided through those situations, and the lens that they view you at, you may not know until they get older. You may not know the effectiveness of your parenting in a lot of ways until they get older. Till you're sitting at the dinner table and they're 21 years old or 22 years old, and they mention something, they have a recall about a circumstance that was in the family home, or they're like me, they investigate. Well, why was this in this particular way when I was growing up? Why did we live? Why did we live with grandma? Why did we spend the night at particular places? Why do we eat at? I remember I had a babysitter. Throw a little bit of humor in the situation here. Now we're talking about that. I remember I had a babysitter. I think her name was Rolinda or something like that. She didn't do anything wrong. So, Rolinda, if you're listening, get in contact with me. Miss Rolinda. Boy, I used to get dropped off there, and one day she made a casserole. It was either a squash casserole or some type of zucchini or some type of vegetable casserole. And that's all I would say. It's something that I would never forget what it looked like, what it tastes like. My taste buds can feel it today. So that, with that in mind, children have a physical recall as to whether they get dinner on a regular basis every night, as to whether they get loved and cared for. I have a problem with birthdays. They just don't register. A lot of times people remember birthdays automatically, and it means they got a good memory, or it means that they function well with family recognition and celebration. And so everybody in the family's birthday just automatically pops up. Well, I didn't have birthday parties when I was growing up. I didn't. It wasn't that it was a bad thing. I just don't remember not one birthday celebration between the age that I can remember anything. I don't know, 6, 7, Head Start on up to living in the home with my dad at 16, 17. I don't recall ever having one birthday party. I don't recall seeing my sister and brother have one. So am I scarred for life? Yeah, in a way, because I just I don't have that birthday party. Now, I did have birthday parties as an adult for a few years. Okay. So a child is impressionable through those stages of life. And again, my emphasis is on protecting them and making them feel secure. And any type of relationship that a child has that doesn't make them feel secure is actually taking away. They won't feel the deficit. They won't realize the lack of attention to that area until it's realized, sometimes at a later date and sometimes too late. So my take on that is families should be guided. I think I'll just use the term so you guys can know what I'm talking about. The black church, to me, I wish it could have been more comforting. I had to go up on front and say my Bible verse. I enjoy going to Bible school, study in the mornings, early at church when we got there, when we did go. But it was, to me, it was sort of an extension of school. But I do know it was God's people taking care of me as God's property. I did gather that point, but I just didn't gather that I was supposed to be protected. And that leads me to what I'm about to say now is I was not protected in a lot of ways because a couple of predators did pick me off. Yeah, yep, they sure did. Now, if you can read between the lines, I said it. Yep. I was, let's see, inappropriately touched. Okay, we'll just take it that far. So when it comes to being protected, now I didn't feel unprotected. Sometimes when I get up during the day, if it's on the weekend or something like that, I just put on my clothes and go outside and roam the neighborhood. To me, that was sometimes, I mean, that's pretty much what I do now. Roam the neighborhood, you know. So that is the key is how is your child perceiving? Is there breakfast and there's a ceremonious activity when they get up? Do they go get a shower? Do they come back in for lunch? Do they make their own lunch? And then you have a family kind of get together during dinner time. From what I understand, sit down dinners are becoming a thing of the past, and likely once a week if it's still around, or a happenstance when people watch a movie and they're sharing a bag of popcorn. So, or just coming together, Netflix and chill, as they call it, for all the other kind of reasons. And so if you know about the family current situation and children and their relationship with parents and when it's time to go to bed, I recall I did get one sort of guidance. No, two. And I mentioned earlier, I got to take something back, or I got to add something to that. I didn't get a lot of guidance, or didn't, I was freestyling in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, when it got 9 o'clock, I'm going to bed. Period. If I was sitting out there watching TV and that guy on that television said parental discretion is advised, okay, that's my cue. I'm going to bed. So as I think, as I speak, yes, I did get the consciousness that there were some things that I was not allowed to put my eyes on because I wasn't ready yet. And I got that feeling. I didn't get the feeling that it was something that I had to sneak, and I didn't feel like I was put at a disadvantage by my family when they said go to bed. So for that reason, I went to bed and I kept a bedtime of 9 o'clock for quite a few years. And what it did was it actually trained my biological clock. If I don't watch out for it and if I don't have plans, I'll get sleepy at 9 o'clock. That comes from my childhood. So another staple was I did get at least one hot meal a day. I do recall that. I do recall mom coming in, getting in from work, and it's going to be fried chicken, spaghetti, living onions, fish, baked fish. I'm remembering everything. I'm making y'all hungry, and potato salads, cake. So looking back, I wasn't traumatized as a child, even though I a couple of predators caught up with me. And I didn't feel like I was not protected. I feel like I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but I was not in an inappropriate place at that time. So I guess I could say I was in sort of the right place and the other people made it the wrong time. So with that, all of that I just previously mentioned about children learning from you what is appropriate and where they sit in the scheme of life, that window is out of the cycles of life. Let's see, how old am I? I'm 53. I probably had I've lived this is probably a little over halftime of my life. Okay, listen to me talking about halftime. It's third quarter. Okay, if this was football, I hadn't hit fourth quarter yet. This third quarter of my life. If you basketball, same thing. That first quarter of their life is so important before they leave junior high school. Before now, you want to crunch that before they even leave elementary school. They're learning. They have a perception of the things that I was getting a perception of in junior high school. So their eyes, their ears, their senses, the artificial intelligence that exists today is wow, so plentiful and so specific and so appealing because we raise children around the devices that they're living around now, and they can pick up cues from anything. We had one device in our house, excuse me, two. We had a telephone and a TV. Didn't have a microwave, if you want to consider that a device. So, but as far as communication, it was a telephone and a TV. So, learning in your home studiously to understand an environment and be equipped to go out into the world, being able to call home and say, I'm here and I'm there. You had to go to the person's telephone. If you were spending a night with somebody, you could call home on the dial up, that phone. So that was open, that was available. That's a check right there because you could call and your parents could call that household if they wanted to look for you. Or you did like my grandma, you just walk to the door and you say, Verna, woo! And you could, that was some type of tribal call. Boy, I could hear that thing all across the neighborhood. And if I didn't hear it, somebody could say, yeah, Vern, your grandma calling you. So those things were valid, valid communication methods. So I'm talking about children picking up from the environment that they're in. Now I'm into the household. I'm into the ability for them to use devices, and students and children are using cell phones early now. If you could tell me the earliest that you have seen a child have a cell phone issued to them, I'll give you guys a million bonus points of love if you can call in at 252-756-2008. If you can tell me the youngest person that's actually got a cell phone issued to them, in this age, students going to school and the shootings and things of that nature, some parents have given their students cell phones, and you hear that when you hear about these instances on the news that children were using cell phones to call 911. But I don't know what the earliest is. Do students have, put in the comments, if you're watching the rebroadcast of the show, put in the comments if you give your child a cell phone in Head Start. They do still have Head Start. This mic is kind of low. I got to bring this thing up. Woo, it's hurt my neck. But yeah, if the earliest a student gets a device to communicate with family, to communicate with it's like you filling out paperwork for your student or your child, you always put down the emergency contact information. So now the emergency contact information, or that emergency sheet, is going to include your phone number, grandma's phone number, and also the student's telephone number. You know, if you're talking about how to correspond with and during emergencies, you might ask the student, is this a number that we can always contact you on if we should get cut off? Is there any other numbers? So yeah, do you have your email address? So in elementary school, do they have? Yes, they have an email address if they have a cell phone. I believe they still sign that up with contact information as such. Who gets the bill? All right. So in my area of raising a child, he got his phone at right at high school as a freshman, I believe. So the millennials got their phones. They were the first group of students wholesale use of cell phones. Spread it rapidly with them, and I'm like, we're gonna get my son a certain amount of minutes, and that's all he wanted. So me and his mom, we worked that out, and I don't know, he might have 1,500 minutes or something like that. I knew that was just gonna go up in smoke almost immediately. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna use. That's all I need. I just need something to communicate. Man, come on. Man, he smoked that phone up. That thing was burning. So that began the age of getting devices. I don't think she was headed into the teenage area. So I'm gonna back up and stay down in the area where you're concentrating on the youthful age, especially the age of 8 years old. Is probably in textbook wise, and you can look this up. You can check me. All right, y'all can check me. 8 years old, I believe, is still, now I could be outdated on certain things, is still the most impressionable age of a young girl or a young boy. Can I get a witness out there? Is still, excuse me, the most impressionable age. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about the subliminal programming, because I think that can take place in the womb. What you eat and what you're talking about when that child, before that child is born, there's some things that can happen. I even think I've seen some video and audio tapes and programs that you can participate in for an unborn child. All right, that's another one. If you see that in the comments, help me out with that, because you probably bought it for $29.99. How to teach your child to talk before he's born. Okay, we gonna need some things like that. Mind you, now I want to share with you about my educational goals, but we're talking about the relationships here, so I want to stick to that point. When you're talking about 8 years old, there are some things that are happening physiologically to a child at 8 years old. Yeah, they're getting older. Ta-da! But it's likely in brain development where they're now so vulnerable as to watching. You see a picture sometime of a father and son looking at each other, a mother and daughter looking at each other, and the child has got the peculiar look on their face, or they seem to be like they are really happy, or siblings at that time. Like like a parent is brother and sister. That's that child reading the data and really, really, really listening to um, mom or pop at that time, at that age. I'm not a psychiatrist nor am I a psychologist, but I believe the 8-year-old time frame is very, very, very important. So the things that we're bringing up for you to be mindful of about the relationship, about the touching, the awareness, the hugging, the kissing, the sugar. Um, I don't know if there's any difference between a child being kissed on the cheek or a child now, kissing their parents on the lips. I don't know if any difference. If there is, let me know. My parents were not a touchy feely group of people. Okay, I didn't see them hug each other a lot, and I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to insert myself into this message here. I'm just using myself as an example. So I didn't see all of that a lot. I didn't get hugs. I didn't get good night kisses. I didn't, get those things. And, I'm not saying I had a bad childhood either. All right. But I'm just saying I had an eventful childhood, but I didn't get those things. I got the arguing. I got the dysfunctional side. I got my mom beating up my dad kind of thing. Those are the fights that I saw. Them threatening each other with knives and threatening to kill each other and stuff like that. So it was consistent. It was a lot of yelling and fussing. But did I become that type of person? No, I didn't. I just saw it as just one of those things. There were a few other family members or families around the neighborhood that had that kind of thing. I did find a wave to ride through that. Okay, I knew God was taking care of me. Boy, he was, because I could leave out of my home and I could go. I did feel like it was home. I could go and walk through the woods and I can be alone with God. I can be alone with nature. I could get back there. I could start a hey, y'all, let me tell you what I was doing in the woods. I start me a little fire. I can sneak some bologna out of the house and go back in there and cook. But I was probably about 10 then. I went 10, 11, or 12 when I started that. I'm talking about 8 years old. This is the time you want to look at them for sports. And when they get into sports and when they get into a team situation, even before then, okay, I'm saying, but it's a different take there. They can become competitive at 8 years old. They can become competitive younger than that. But a win and a loss and how to win and how to lose, I think that's an age where you can teach them the character of sportsmanship. Okay. But what I'm getting to as far as this area of 8 years old, their awareness of their clothing and what they're wearing and the mask, the social mask, to me, I believe it sort of begins then. How they're showing the world their personality is determined by a lot about their parental guidance, their mentors, okay, their tutors, and they're putting on these masks to what? Do what we're doing. They want to mimic us, some of them. You see that picture of the father, son, the father holding his arm up like this. I don't know if you can see me on. I know you can't see me on radio. Listen to me. Their father's holding his arm up, showing his bicep, and the little boy down next to him curling his arm up as well, balling his fists up to look like daddy. So you're getting a mimic. You're getting some copycat things going on at that age. And now it's so important. I know I'm rambling a bit, but let me get factual. It's so important if you smoke. It's so important if you use extreme cuss words. Some cuss words have become normalized. Some people know how to cuss, and some people can cuss seamlessly and it make it sound like everyday language, and they're not offensive in a way, in the worst way. Yeah, there you go. To me, all of it is expensive, and extensively offensive used in the way that we use it today. So swearing and cursing, but you got to think it's the human language, and some words we say now were not even permissible years ago, and some words years ago are not permissible now. So when somebody says, I don't like cussing, what do you mean? I think a person can be just as mean or even worse without using cuss words. But it does break up a fluid conversation, and it does agitate, and it is offensive if you're being disrespectful. It multiplies at time 10 when you start using the common swear words of today. So no, to me, it's not. You know, it's definitely not something I do. It's definitely not something I condone to use in everyday language. But I will say to you, to me personally, in front of children, I'm gonna stick to the subject of children and their relationships, and what the teacher Miss Manny was talking about. In front of children, I'm gonna say swearing and cursing to me is just as bad as narcissistic behavior. Telling a child a lie or creating a scenario where you're talking about a family member, or you're gossiping, or you're saying your dad is worthless, or you're saying, to me, that's cutting deeper than a cuss word. Okay. Now, I'm not condoning cussing. Don't get around me like that. I mean, I'm eventually start backing up. You know, eventually, I mean, you can talk to me in the way that, decency, we ain't at no club, and you don't have to show me that you bad or show me that you Samuel Jackson and all of that using harsh language. But to a child, I think the demeanor and the way you use your sentences can be just as bad or worse as cursing. You can be downright evil when you start talking about somebody and you don't know what you're talking about. And that child listening to you talk about that person, and their perception is set in stone because you said somebody act this way or somebody does this, and they will treat that person when they get around that other person you were talking about. They'll be apprehensive because of what you said, and what you said could have been right. It's just, can these children handle? Can the child handle what you are talking about? Are they ready for it? That's what I'm talking about. Is not necessarily the content that you're dealing with. Is basically how you're presenting to the child is what the focus is here today. You are the adult. You are the custodian. You are the guardian of the children that we're talking about. You are the responsible party. So whether you would take the blame if these children grow up to be criminals, psychiatrists, doctors, lawyers, the worst of society or the best of society, we are responsible for showing them how to establish relationships in the foundation of their lives. So I hope that you are gathering this message. I pray. We got about 6 minutes remaining on the show. We had technical difficulties on Miss Manning's side, and so I'm just doing the best I can. I was a child, and if you're listening to the show, you were likely a child, and all of us still have that child within us, and all of us get in touch with that hurt child. That sounds like a therapeutic move, don't it? I'm a coach, and I don't coach trauma, and I don't coach from traumatic events. I coach what I see and how the results that a person is looking for at that time in their lives, and the regiments that they want to use to get accomplishments and goals met. That's what I do as a certified life coach. But I don't go back and look into the traumatic incidents or traumatic episodes of your life and the shadows and the stories that you have that shaped your life. That's for a professional counselor. That's for a licensed minister who has the formula and the model to help you with. What I want to say though is I want to reemphasize that what you do and what you don't do is being read. You're being watched just as much as the cell phone is being watched. You think the kids watching Facebook more? No, they might be into that social media, but they done got a whole eye full of what you're doing. You're raising them, or you're a guardian of some sort, or you're a family, or you're a part of their life. And so, from 8 to 10 years old, I'm expecting you to know that you're still on stage. And the thing that I don't really understand, because sometimes when people don't like certain things, it's because they don't understand it, is I remember the term being fast, or I remember the term you think you grown. Right now, a child, you can hear a 2-year-old using words that they use in high school. You can find a 20-year-old, a 15-year-old, or a 10-year-old using words that make them seem like they are knowledgeable. Ma'am, sir, they are not knowledgeable. That's just a fact that they've learned. They're mimicking some knowledge. Don't you treat those children like they are capable of living an independent life or emancipating themselves way earlier than they should. Okay, don't treat them that way. Don't reward them just because they use a big word to say, oh, you're mature, you know what you're doing. Even though children do take care of their younger siblings, they do, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. But what I'm saying. Listen, I'm trying to use inference here. You know what I'm talking about. Don't at this point in time, don't reward behavior that I remember if a child would curse or if a child would drink some alcohol, they would kind of get sort of not a little praise, but some type of, wow, boy, look at what you're doing. You did some grown folk stuff now. But we got put back in our place. Yeah, we sure did. I don't know if the children are getting put back in their place now. Okay, I don't know if children are getting credit cards or debit cards or not. But those are things that you would be forward in your child's lessons in life too soon, because their brain won't get mature until they're like 24, 25. That's when the brain actually sort of starts to settle in and they start to have a concrete development of personality that's not all over the place. But back to the younger audience, we've been talking about the ability for them and to understand, and I'm looking forward to Ms. Nada coming back and teaching and bringing her conclusion and the meat of her lesson for today's show next week. So you just heard Coach Garrison tonight, but we're going to have her come in and do her things, her thoughts, her moments. But I just want you to say tell those children you love them, hug them, spoil them with love and affection, and then make them clean up their room. Spoil them with love and affection, and then make them go wash the car, even though they're 9, 8 years old. Show them how to work. I want them trading stock before they even get out of elementary school, understanding interest rates and things of that nature. But I ain't going to go too far with that. We're talking about relationships. You can get the full blast from Ms. Nada coming soon. Join us next Wednesday for another episode of Let's Talk Real Life with Nada Manning. This is your co-host, Coach Vernon Garrison. It's been a pleasure. 43 seconds left. Dear God, we thank you for this opportunity to just be here to talk about the responsibility that you have given us for our offspring, our young people. It's such an extraordinary calling and responsibility. Give us the grace and give us the patience and the time and the ability and the resources to take care of what you have given us. Now we ask that in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And we also want to thank the radio station for giving us one more night. This is WBIS-LP 106.9. You guys have a blessed week. So long.
You're listening to Awesome Radio 106.